It feels like it was almost a decade ago when the original Dead Island 2 trailer was revealed at E3 2014. Wait, 2014? Oh shit, it really has been a decade. Anyway, Dead Island 2 finally released on storefronts in 2023, a short 9 years after it was initially announced by, and at this point, absolutely iconic trailer. I think a lot of people, myself included, were surprised that it even got released in the first place, albeit with many changes throughout the game's development, from studio changes to complete genre shifts. Initially, Jaeger Development took on the project with ambitions to innovate within the zombie RPG genre by allowing players to explore both interiors and exteriors seamlessly, aiming to provide a vast open world. However, not long into development, the game's publisher pushed for a significant change in direction towards creating an 8-player, always online, seamless multiplayer game, a vision drastically different from what Jaeger had originally pitched. This shift was made without a clear understanding of what seamless multiplayer meant at the time, and without returning to the pre-production phase to reassess the game's design accordingly. This rushed decision was indicative of the development's troubled direction, attempting to create what was referred to as the world's smallest MMO without a solid plan for implementation. Compounding these challenges was the decision to use Unreal Engine 4, which, despite its capabilities, was not well suited for the open world design Dead Island 2 aspired to. The game, being open world, encountered severe performance issues on consoles. The engine struggled with prioritizing texture loads based on the player's proximity, leading to significant loading problems where even basic elements like trash cans or large assets like buildings wouldn't render until the player was extremely close. These technical limitations severely hampered the game's development, making it difficult to achieve the envisioned seamless open-world experience on console platforms. Despite the hardships faced during its development, including a global pandemic, the game's final developer, Dambuster Studios, adopted a satirical approach to the game's narrative and setting. Set in Los Angeles, Dead Island 2 featured eccentric characters and over-the-top scenarios that playfully commented on real-world events and influencer culture. The game didn't shy away from poking fun at various societal elements while still aiming to offer poignant moments amidst the satire. The studio saw the prolonged development time and the dev hell reputation not as a burden but as an opportunity to refine the game and deliver a product that balanced humor with the seriousness of its thematic content. The story of Dead Island 2's development is a testament to the complexities and challenges of game development, showcasing how shifts in vision, technical limitations, and external pressures can significantly impact the project's trajectory. And, despite these obstacles, the team's persistence and willingness to adapt to unforeseen challenges ultimately allowed Dead Island 2 to see the light of day. As I said in the last chapter, Dead Island 2 initially started out like an open world game, much like the original entry in the series. But instead of creating a large, seamless open world, the studio instead decided to create a series of smaller but more detailed maps. There are 10 of these in the base game, although I'd argue that there's only 8, as the sewer and metro maps are brown tunnels and grey tunnels respectively. A bunch of the earlier maps are incredibly detailed and expansive however, with a large amount of explorable and lootable interiors to boot. Bel Air, the Halpern Hotel and the Beverly Hills just to name a few. Each of these areas has a large amount of things to do and boxes to check. These things range from completing both main and side quests, looking around for rare weapons, scavenging around for keys, collectibles and crafting materials, or just good old zombie killing. The primary component of Dead Island 2's gameplay is of course standing and hitting. Here's the catch though, it does this part really well. This is in part due to something that the developers have dubbed the Flesh system, also known as fully locational evisceration system for humanoids. This damage system for the zombies allows you to completely annihilate every part of a zombie, chop off their head for a nearly instantaneous kill, remove their arm so they can't use it to swing at you anymore, break their leg to turn them into a crawler. This system is extremely impressive, and downright satisfying to go absolutely ham on the undead of LA. Also, just like many other games that have recently been released, Dead Island 2 is an RPG, and thus it has damage numbers, item rarities, experience bars, and of course classes. Or well, characters disguised as classes. The game has 6 characters, with them fitting into 3 Slayer types, a man and a woman for each. For heavyweight we have Carla and Ryan, who stands at the highest level of toughness and resilience, meaning that they can withstand the most amount of damage before going down. For middleweight we got Jacob and Danny. The middleweight type focuses on stamina and a higher peak health, and the lightweight type focuses on higher critical damage and agility. Each of these slayers has their own advantages and disadvantages. For example, Ryan is the equivalent of a brick wall, taking less damage from all forms of physical attacks he receives, but he's also slow. like the aforementioned brick wall. Danny can regain health from killing zombies in quick succession, but she regains less health from medkits. You can also expand on your Slayer by collecting skills. This is a collectible card system in which you get to pick and choose between a variety of buffs and debuffs, and by the end of the story, you'll have enough cards to play one full-length game of Magic the Gathering. Skills are divided into 5 separate categories: Innate, Ability, Survivor, Slayer, and Newman. Innate skills are skills that are unique to a specific Slayer, usually designating their playstyle or highlighting what their strong suit is in combat. Ability skills are skills that give the player additional movement or new attack options. Skills in this category can range from the ability to block and dodge incoming attacks, the ability to perform a drop kick, or being able to let out a powerful war cry in order to boost the toughness of you and your allies, as well as weakening nearby zombies. Survivor skills are skills that have a focus on increasing the health or healing of characters. For example, Serial Killer rewards the player with a damage boost after killing a zombie. Bob and Weave gives players a boost to attack speed and agility. There's also skills that amplify the ability skills, such as adding an explosion to your dropkick, or healing a set amount of health whenever you use your Warcry. Slayer skills are skills that are focused mainly on increasing damage outputs via a variety of factors, ranging from hitting enemies in the head or breaking certain limbs of the zombies. Hack and Dash gives you an attack boost from maiming zombies. Far From Done gives you a damage boost if you take or block damage, and the Limb Reaper restores some health whenever you maim a zombie. Lastly, there's Newman skills. These are skills that are infused with the zombie virus coursing through your character's veins. Oh yeah, spoiler alert, you're infected. These usually give you a massive buff, but also come with a massive risk factor. Anger Management allows you to stay in Fury mode past the actual bar itself, but will start draining health until you get dangerously low. Corpse Blossom will trigger an explosion whenever you kill a zombie with elemental damage, and Glass Cannon gives you a big boost to critical damage, but lowers your toughness by 50%. Equipping these skills comes with a large downside as well, as you can only equip 3 Newman skills at once, and each additional one adds a debuff to your stats. The first reduces your peak health, the second reduces your stamina regeneration, and the final leaves you with no health regeneration and reduced health recovery from medkits and other healing items. But skills are only half the battle, as the other half will be fought with your hands. The many weapons of Dead Island 2 come in all shapes and sizes, with them being divided into 2 distinct categories: melee and ranged. Melee weapons are also divided into a variety of subcategories, like Bulldozer, Maiming, and Frenzy. Each of these subclasses also has a set playstyle, ensuring everyone can find a mixture of weapons that's fine-tuned to their preferred way of playing the game. Bulldozer weapons are large, blunt weapons that inflict stability damage with every hit, and all their heavy attacks are guaranteed to do critical damage. Maiming weapons are the ones that deal extra damage whenever they hit limbs, and restore stamina whenever you maim an enemy. And lastly, Frenzy weapons are fast attack weapons that become even faster with each subsequent hit you change the cover. Ranged weapons are mostly firearms, ranging from pistols and revolvers to shotguns and assault rifles. These also come with a variety of subclasses. Demolition gives guaranteed critical hits on stunned zombies. Tactical gives you movement speed bonus and decreased reload times. And Sharpshooter guarantees critical hits whenever you land a headshot. All of these weapons are supported by some stellar sound design and great graphics. You can truly feel the weight of these tools of destruction as you cave in the skull of some rotten shambler before doing it all over again 5 seconds later. And after spending about 40 hours traversing the lands of Los Angeles, it's not gotten boring yet. As this is an RPG, all weapons have an obligatory level and a tier of rarity. Rarities go from improvised, common, uncommon, rare, superior, and finally, legendary. The higher the tier, the better the weapon is. Usually. Higher tier weapons also have more perk slots to further enhance a weapon on workbenches found throughout the world, and levels are meant to give you a generic idea of how much damage a weapon will deal without any mods or perks. But what are mods or perks? All weapons, starting from uncommon, can be equipped with a mod, and up to 4 perks at legendary to further enhance their zombie slaying capabilities. Mods give the weapon an elemental oomph, making it so that the weapon can deal additional damage, but also, depending on the mod, apply a status effect to the zombie once you've hit them enough times in a row. Cremator lights them ablaze, Electrocutor gives them a shocking surprise, Impactor can cause zombies to go flying, Liquidator makes the skin melt off their bones, Mutilator weakens them, and Punctuator applies bleeding. Each of these mods can be applied to a weapon of your choosing once you've got access to its blueprints, which can be earned through story progression or found through exploration. These can then be crafted using a hodgepodge of generic materials like fasteners and adhesive. You know, the usual zombie survival game stuff. We've also got perks. In short, they're the same as mods. But instead of doing something to the zombies, they do something to the weapon instead. These once again come in all shapes and sizes, ranging from charging up heavy attacks quicker, increasing limb damage and durability, or giving you a damage boost whenever you land a critical hit. However, all melee weapons have a durability bar and will break after landing a set amount of hits. This amount can both increase and decrease depending on rarity, as well as any installed mod and or perks. You can also fully repair a weapon at any given workbench for a combination of parts and money. Slayers can also equip 2 throwable items called curveballs. These are usually some nifty gadget that can change the tide of battle in more way than one. These range from distractions to explosive distractions. Also, the game features a wide array of mid-combat interactions. Water puddles or oil spills can be found all around the world, and if there don't happen to be any, you can always make one yourself. You can set up traps for the zombies by electrocuting the water with a shock weapon, or setting the oil ablaze with a fire weapon. And finally, we've got Fury mode. Fury is a consumable meter that can be filled by dealing and receiving damage, as well as drinking energy drinks. Once it's full, you can enter Fury mode, which will restore a quarter of your health, increase your toughness by quite a bit, give you a massive boost in damage, and make you nearly invincible to physical damage, which you can then use to unleash absolute mayhem on any zombies that happen to be unfortunate enough to find themselves within your immediate vicinity. Overall, it's a well thought out, in-depth and enjoyable system. It's not exactly breaking new ground or changing the entire genre, but I've never found myself getting bored of it, unlike some other games. Now let's talk about what goes hand in hand with the weapons of this game. The primary antagonists you'll be mowing down by the dozen, the zombies. These are split up into 2 primary categories: the barely a threat common zombies and the much more lethal Apex variants. Let's start with some of the common ones. You've got the Walker, the most common zombie in Los Angeles. They pose virtually no threat to you and can be found aimlessly wandering around on every street. Then you've got Shamblers, essentially the same, but even weaker after having spent a little too much time out in the Californian sun. And our last of the 3 common archetypes is the Runner. Think Walker, but fast. But that's not all Dead Island 2 has to offer. The game has an additional 17 rare variants that have been mutated by the virus. There's 11 Walker variants and 6 Runner variants. The Walker variants range from ones that align with specific elements, like Burning Walkers and Shocking Walkers, who have immunity to weapons that apply fire and electricity damage respectively. Spiky Walkers are covered in glass and deal continuous damage whenever they're close to you. And then there's Walkers that are resistant to an element due to whatever they were wearing pre-death. Riot Gear Walkers start off fully immune until you break off their armor. Firefighter Walkers are completely immune to fire, shock and caustic damage. And Hazmat Walkers are immune to caustic damage. 5 of the 6 Runner types are rebates from the Walkers, except the Eat Courier, who are zombies that carry around a delivery bag filled with protein bars and energy drinks. But all of these ones are at the bottom of the zombie hierarchy and barely hold a candle to the actual threats of LA. The Apex variants are the cream of the crop of this virtual apocalypse, each one having a varied skill set and a different approach on how to best deal with them. The first of these is the Crusher. This big hulking monstrosity of a zombie can be found walking around in his shorts all around the world. They're quite slow, are extremely resilient to damage, and pack quite a punch, capable of putting you on your ass if you catch their fist with your face. There's also the Inferno Crusher, which is a variant that's completely immune to fire damage. The next Apex variant is the Slobber. This chunky boy is by far the most putrid and disgusting one in the game, as it strolls around with its guts hanging out on full display. Its mutations have given it the ability to spit out caustic bile, which can melt away the player's health. Their slow movement will make them attempt to keep their distance in order to utilize their bile to its fullest potential, so closing the distance between them and you is the best way to take them out. This one also comes with 2 variants, the first one of them being the Putrefied Slobber. Visually, his guts have been exchanged for a small colony of leeches. Gameplay wise, the bile has been swapped out for sticky bile blobs, which attach to any surface and explode once players get too close to them. And finally, there's the Firestorm Slobber, who shoot out, and I quote, flaming projectiles of organic napalm. They deal fire damage both from afar and up close, and are resistant to fire and physical attacks. So honestly, you're best off just whipping out the gat and blowing their fucking head off. Next up, the Screamer. These are usually skinnier zombies whose lungs have mutated to have an enlarged capacity, allowing them to let out guttural, ear-piercing screams which will push back and damage the player. Their scream can also attract other nearby zombies, or cause new ones to spawn entirely. They are however quite susceptible to blunt damage, as well as having their scream interrupted by popping a quick bullet or 2 into their forehead. The Voltaic Screamer is a more lethal variant, whose scream also creates an electrical force field around them, dealing shock damage to anything that happens to be close enough. Now for the boring one, we've got the Burster, who are incredibly weak and easy to deal with. They kinda just feel like the devs had a certain archetype to fill, so they did it. They are covered in gas axe, which makes them explode when damaged. So the only way they can even be a threat is if you weren't paying attention and they managed to get the drop on you. Now for the ones that are a genuine pain in the ass to deal with, and can literally wipe the floor with you if you're ill-prepped or already weakened from a previous fight. The Butcher is the most aggressive zombie variant. Their forearms have mutated into razor-sharp blades, capable of slicing you to ribbons within an instant. They will run around like a wild animal and have an actual sense of self-preservation, as when they run low on health, they'll attempt to disengage from the fight and find a nearby body on the floor to feast on in order to restore their health. Their variant is the Vicious Butcher, which are even more lethal than its normal version. They have an extremely aggressive attack pattern, and can completely annihilate you if you're caught off guard. They've also got the added bonus of being covered in glass shards or barbed wire, giving them even more damage output. The best way to deal with a Butcher is have having packed a melee assault or sporting rifle, as you'll be able to deal a lot of damage while keeping your distance. And lastly, the Mutator, the true apex of the zombie horde. This guy starts off by disguising himself as a regular walker, but once disturbed he'll transform into an absolute monstrosity. They'll become taller, have their chest open up and sprout a massive bone club from one of their arms. They'll attempt to rush a player in order to crush them with their club, or they can shoot out bone shards from their chest cavity, applying bleed to anything hit by them. As such, the best way to deal with them are high damage sporting rifles, or just kill them before they have a chance to mutate. Killing a set amount of a type of zombie will give you Zompedia entries and complete challenges. The Zompedia entries tell you more about the biology of the zombie types, their resistances, weaknesses, and general ways to deal with them. And the challenges reward you with parts, permanent character upgrades, or cold hard cash to splash. Alright, enough yapping about the ins and outs of this game though, let's talk story. Dead Island 2's main campaign is a decently long 15-hour romp, meaning it doesn't overstay its welcome, unlike some other games. Dead Island 2 begins with a cutscene where each of our slayers uses their unique skills and knowledge to board the last evacuation plane, but it turns out there's an uninvited guest, so it gets shot down before it's able to leave the city. This leads us to a pretty stylish character selection screen, with each choice telling us a little about their innate skills and overall statistics. I decided to pick Jacob, not because I felt particularly drawn to him or something, but because he's on the cover, and it makes him the canon choice in my mind. After waking up, crawling through the wreckage and patching ourselves up, we come across a trio of survivors. World famous actress Emma Johns, her assistant Michael, and Ronnie, who's just a guy. The introductions are cut short once we're ambushed by a group of zombies, and after dealing with them we get bitten by someone we're trying to save. But we don't turn like every other regular person does. After waking up in Bel Air, solving a battery puzzle, and being told we can smash mag locks in order to open secure doors, we fight our way through a pretty swanky mansion before making it to Emma's house. Another thing this game does really well is parody the whole LA culture, or well, cesspool. Everything is caked in layers of irony, from characters believing the whole outbreak is an elaborate prank to zombies being dripped out from head to toe in fictional hypebeast merchandise. We enter the mansion and a scuffle unfolds between the survivors and myself, once they see I've got a nasty bite mark on my arm. But it ends with me passing out before they decide who gets the honor of capping me. We come to only to find out that we're tied up, but are quickly set free once zombies break into the house, and we're revealed to be the only one capable of actually fending for ourselves. After mopping up the uninvited guests, we return to the survivors to tell them that they're safe, but our brief exchange is interrupted by the appearance of a wild Sam B, one of the survivors from the original Dead Island, and artist behind one of the songs of all time, Who Do You Voodoo? Sam tells us that the reason we haven't turned yet is because we're immune actually. Lucky break that. After being informed about workbenches and weapon enhancements, we set off to make contact with the authorities to tell them about our newfound immunity. While doing so, we help out an old fella named Curtis. After mopping up the former guests of his party, we inform him that he can take up refuge inside the Jaunt residence, and he can actually be found there later, along with any other survivors that we happen to rescue after their quests. Nice continuity there. Afterwards, we make it to the Goat Pen, a massive content creator house, complete with recording setups and podcast rooms. You're even able to find and kill the Goat Pen members. Always nice to make a little room in the overcrowded sea of content creation. After a while we make it to the Halprin Hotel, which the US military turned into a massive quarantine center. Upon clearing out the hotel lobby, it becomes pretty clear that the checkpoints become more of a death point. Why the fuck did I write that? Anyway, we can hear a lone major talking over the intercom, seemingly taunting a creature we've not yet come across. After a little, we make it to the absolute horror show that is the hotel's pool, and upon doing some investigating, we discover that it was filled with a corrosive substance called Caustic X in order to melt the bodies en masse, regardless of if they were zombies, infected, or just regular human. After slicing and dicing our way through the floors of the hotel, we make it to room 307. But it turns out that the monster got here first, leaving just a mangled corpse behind. We collect the Major's keys and head down to the ballroom where we contact the CDC before being interrupted by our first crusher of the game. Becky the Bride is the beast that mutilated the Major after her to-be husband was turned into caustic sludge. After dealing with her, we return to Bel Air where we help out a click-whoring content creator by killing a bunch of zombies in unique and creative ways for her channel. Once we return to the Jaunt residence, we're informed that Michael has ran off in an attempt to make himself at least somewhat useful. But it just results in us having to go and rescue him. His trail takes us to his house in Beverly Hills, where we discover both a map of a nearby movie lot and some messages on his answering machine from a girl named Jessie, which leads us to another house occupied by a couple of alcoholics. And after helping them out, they redirect us yet again to another nearby house. And after fighting our way through this house, we finally find Jessie. After having a quick chat with her, she tells us that Michael went to a place called Dambuster Studios, the nearby movie production company. We get there right as the sun goes down, making it adequately spooky as we search to find Michael. After collecting a key, we make our way through a variety of movie sets, which is honestly pretty cool. There's some realistic interactions with them too, like turning on the sprinklers to simulate rain, or canned laughter on the sitcom set. After slashing our way through a bunch of zombified extras in the Aztec set, we finally make it to where Michael is hiding out. But we are rudely interrupted by the creature that's been stalking Michael for quite a bit, the game's first slobber. After dealing with it, we talk him into returning to Emma's house, and then we get a call from Sam informing us that he's found some guns. So we make it to the house, lockpick the gate, and get introduced to the former owner of this place. She used to be a big game hunter, but now she's nothing more than another zombie. But actually, she's more than just another zombie, as she's revealed to be the first screamer we'll get to take on. After avenging Ronnie, we meet Sam in the gun room, who gives us a nifty sporting rifle that we instantly get to try out on a small horde of zombies. After making it back to Emma's mansion, it's revealed that Michael was bitten on his way back from the movie set. And after putting him out of his misery, Emma no longer wants to accompany us to the coast, so we continue alone. Next up, there's about an hour-long sewer section. It's very bland and boring. It's not a bad or unfinished section or anything like that, but it just feels like such a massive dip compared to the previous areas we traversed. While we're down there, we come across a guy named Patton, an army veteran that's been living down in the sewers ever since he had his face deformed in combat. After he raves about his love for Emma John's movies, we continue on before coming across the results of what happens when you pump thousands of liquefied corpses into the sewers, and I prefer to forget this as soon as possible. After finally ascending from the sewer like an inverted Super Mario, I help out a group of survivors holed up inside of a nearby restaurant. These are called Kai, Alex, Trent, and Bud. Anyway, Bud gets his head crushed by a crusher. Oh, is that why they called that? Afterwards, we go track down two other crushers named Moose and Dylan. Moose is already dead, as we discover Patton experimenting with his organs, which unlocks autophagy perks for us. A stronger version of normal perks that can be crafted using organs dropped from dead zombies. We find Dylan and he turns into the first Inferno Crusher we have to face off against. After sending him into the afterlife, we return to the trio who instruct us on how to get to Ocean Avenue. This involves going through a bunch of quarantine corridors, finding some gate codes, and slowly developing carpal tunnel syndrome from all the zombie killing you'll do here. Once we make it to Ocean Avenue, we enter the Sterling Hotel and finally meet with Ruben the Doctor and the other survivors hiding out. After taking a nap, we're in the mood to take a bath, but the boiler's currently out of commission, so we head down to the maintenance room to fix the boiler. After we make it back upstairs, Ruben tells us that we'll need to prove our immunity before we can call on a rescue, but we'll have to travel down to Santa Monica to get our hands on a sample and a blood drive. So we fight our way through the CDC camp, killing a whole bunch of Ruben's former colleagues, before collecting a sample and moving on to the pier itself. Once we make it to the end of the pier, we have a showdown with Butcher the Clown, the game's first butcher. After dealing with him, we collect a blood drive and return to the hotel, but we still can't call on a rescue actually, because Ruben's rebellious daughter Tisha ran off to get food for other survivors. Once we find her, she tells us that she and her friends have been intercepting encrypted data being sent out by the CDC. We go to a nearby store in order to contact Conrad. Oh, she's this weird goth mommy that we came across in the sewers. After rebooting the service, we speak the code phrase and get to hear a conversation between Ruben and a guy called Constantine. Conrad also tells us about another lab where the CDC took immune people. Once we get there, we take out Noah, a mutator that Ruben experimented on. We get back to the hotel only to find out that Ruben has done a runner, so we ring up Emma and Sam to get them to join our party. On the way to Hollywood Boulevard, we also get Patton to tag along, as he's the only one capable of flying a chopper. Then we have another section where we go through a long grey metro tunnel. It's also kinda boring, but this one at least has the upcoming conclusion of the plot going for it. After we make it to Hollywood Boulevard, Sam starts succumbing to the autophagy, his immunity deteriorating as this is a different strain. We head down into the lab and confront Ruben, who admits to releasing the virus in the city, but oh, trust him, he did it for a good reason. He released the autophagy into the city because the autophagy isn't a virus, it's actually a clock that's hard-coded into human DNA, that'll eventually wipe us all out at a predetermined time, with the only ones being immune being the Newman, aka the Slayers, Conrad, and their unnamed goons. The Newman have a special kind of blood running through their veins, and Ruben used the outbreak to filter them out in order to create a cure. He gives us a single dose of the cure before turning into the Rubenator, who's essentially a mutator, but with even more health. And after defeating him, we return to the survivors, giving Sam the cure before staying behind in the alley to help whatever other survivors we can, but really it's just a far more experience points. Overall, I quite like Dead Island 2 story. It struck a fine balance between serious moments and the still Marvel-esque humor. Each of the playable Slayers also has their own unique dialogue, giving them quite a bit of personality and giving them an instant leg up over any permute that we find in many a Ubisoft games. The plot twists aren't exactly groundbreaking. I mean, fuck. I've covered 4 zombie games on the channel and all of them have been government banned actually, so something different would be appreciated. Hell, they even did the Chosen One shtick again, although we're not the only one in this universe at least. The story does leave a good amount of unanswered questions like what creates a Newman and who the hell is Constantine. However, we didn't have to wait that long for answers to some of these questions, as about half a year after the game's release, its first DLC, House, came out on November 2nd, 2023. House starts off with us finding a golden invitation outside of Emma's mansion, except to get teleported to a massive mansion in Malibu, and after making our way inside we come across a circle of chairs filled with headless corpses. One of the heads turns out to be alive, and after putting them back together, the corpse introduces itself as Vincent and says that they're all part of Constantine's chosen, and that our destiny is to save everyone, as Constantine prophesied. But in order to speak to Constantine, we must complete a series of trials and challenges to prove we are indeed worthy. Also, if you're wondering why I'm playing a different character in this DLC, it's because I lost my footage, and shamelessly stole this from someone else. The first rite of passage has us destroy a weapon in a furnace, for we do not desire material possessions. The second rite of passage sees us electrocute ourselves, for pain. And the third rite makes us admit an embarrassing secret, for fuck if I know. Afterwards, we venture deeper into the compound. We're here to find Veronique's head, who is another one of Constantine's chosen. Once we find the head, she tells us that Constantine predicted the apocalypse, and that will be responsible for the ascension of the chosen few. After carrying back her head and reattaching it to her body, we unlock a different part of the experience. This involves us finding a magical well inside of a spooky forest. We find it behind a locked gate, so we'll have to set a few pyres ablaze in order to unlock it. After doing so, we hop into the well and find a crossbow, which we can use to destroy Dark Brains, a new static enemy type whose nerves block off certain doors until they're hit by an arrow. Afterwards, we go track down Young Ho's head at the nearby diner, but in order to do so, we must defeat an angry pigman in one-on-one combat. After doing so, we collect Young Ho's head and carrying it back to his body. We awake him from a slumber, but he's none too pleased with us. After knocking his head back off, we're allowed to venture deeper into the compound, where we come face to face with Constantine. He's revealed to be an all-knowing artificial intelligence, and he also sent a pair of survivors to track us down all the way at the start of the game. He informs us about an Ark, where hundreds of Chosens have their consciousness uploaded onto, but it's currently under attack by Dark Brains. Setting it free involves destroying a Dark Brain, then fighting off a wave of increasingly stronger zombies. Afterwards, we complete the ascension, and we get teleported back to Emma's mansion, waking up inside of her hot tub. So what actually happened in this DLC? Fuck if I know, but I did like it. Not only did it expand more on the already established mechanics and gameplay of the base game, it answered a lot of questions left by it. My one gripe with this DLC would probably be the fact that it's so short. I'm not a big fan of DLC as is, and for it to only be 2 hours long for a $13 entry point is a bit steep. Regardless, it kept me around for another few hours, and made me look forward to Sola, the game's second DLC. Sola takes us to the blood-soaked grounds of a festival teeming with the undead. We're drowned here by the rhythm of a mysterious beat and a familiar voice. First off, I must say the level design team knocks it out of the park once again. The entire festival ground is filled to the brim with detailed locations, interiors to boot. Everything that you feel should be here is here. Food stands, restaurants, bars, overpriced tents to sleep in, multiple stages and locker areas. Additionally, the festival and the rest of the game's destinations feel like lived-in places. There's half-eaten meals, drinks and luggage haphazardly strewn about the grounds. You can really tell these people are going about their day before having their guts torn out by a zombie. The DLC features 2 new Apex variants for us to fight against. The first of these 2 is the Whipper, a perpetually violent variant who engages in self-mutilation, to the point of being tangled in its own innards. They don't seem to mind that much though, as they've repurposed their own intestines to be used as a makeshift whip. Hence the name. Once they lose half of their health, they're also capable of going into a rage mode, strengthening their attacks and disabling the player's ability to enter fury mode himself. The second Apex variant is the Clotter, a big chunky boy capable of liquidating himself entirely in order to ambush you. Clotters are unique in the sense that they do not come from regular humans, but are instead a sentient mass of flesh from other zombie corpses. Aside from teleportation, they've got some rather slow melee attacks, as well as the ability to fire out a beam of blood should their prey try to run away. These 2 are entirely unique to the Sola grounds, and don't show up in the other locations, even after buying or beating the DLC, which is a bit of a missed opportunity in my opinion. The festival grounds are however a great way to farm kills on any Apex variant, as you'll almost always be attacked by them, often by several at the same time. Sola also adds some pretty swanky new legendary gear, these being the Saw Blade Launcher and the Ripper. The Saw Blade Launcher does exactly what it sounds like, it launches saw blades, and can easily decapitate most regular zombies. And the Ripper is the closest thing this game has to something that you'd be more likely to find in Dead Rising. It's a baseball bat with a saw blade attached. The blade also revs up and spins continuously once you off a few zombies with it. Overall they're both pretty fun, and the Ripper has easily become my most overused weapon. The DLC starts off with us arriving at the festival grounds and hearing a radio broadcast that warns us about something worse than zombies at the festival. We make our way towards the camp of the voice on the radio, and after dealing with our first Whipper, we make our way inside and get acquainted with Grace, the sole survivor of the festival, and who seems to be a pretty run-of-the-mill conspiracy nut. She informs us about a mysterious beat coming from the speakers on the final night of the event, causing all attendees to spontaneously turn into zombies, without being bitten. Quite interesting indeed. We're told to investigate this this beat at 2 nearby DJ stages. After getting there, we discover experimental mood speakers which are charged with people's moods. We can overload the speakers by killing zombies in close proximity of the speaker. Once doing so, we get some trippy dream talk with a familiar character who tells us it's vital for us to restore this beat to its entirety. After overloading the first 2 speakers, we return to Grace, who tells us the beat wants her, and that she's hearing voices in her head too. Afterwards, we make our way through the swanky eco village, the overpriced residential area of the festival. On the way to the main stage, we must overload a wind turbine by throwing a heap of zombies into it, but after doing so, the bloody sludge of former brain eaters turns into the first clauter of the DLC. After defeating it, we push on towards the main stage where we overload a few more of those mood speakers. After speaking to the voice again, she tells us to come find her at the dance floor of a nearby club, before being rudely interrupted by a creature called the Dirge, a sentient clauter. Once we arrive at the nightclub, the voice is revealed to be Cadenza, one of Conrad's lackeys from the main game that just kinda stands around in the background of cutscenes. She says that she's trying to decipher the message of the beat, and that it talks to her. We return to Grace's hideout to find the gates wide open, and after dealing with the uninvited guest, we find her in the basement, freaking out about all the voices in her mind. So we go to silence more speakers. After returning to Grace once again, we try to get Grace out of the festival grounds, but she warns us about the dangers of the beat, and urges us not to listen to it. Cadenza then telepathically asks us to go to the OSK store on Ocean Avenue in order to get a file from Constantine. We talk to it, and Constantine tells us Cadenza has been banned, and he reveals to us that the beat is a code to turn the autophage on inside of all humans, turning them into zombies regardless of if they've been bitten or not. With Cadenza planning to play it on the massive speaker in the club, she could turn the entire world within mere minutes. We return to Solo to find it looking a lot more Stranger Thingsy than before. So, we return to the main stage, take out a lot of zombies, and rescue Grace, who is revealed to be a Newman, with the voices in her head just being a telepathic connection to the others. After she lets them in, we run over to the nightclub to deal with Cadenza, who's become completely entranced by the beat. After talking some sense into her, she sees the errors of her ways, and she agrees to help us shut down the beat once and for all. We do so by partaking in a very long boss fight. Maybe a little too long, but it is adequately challenging for the scope of its danger. This fight involves fighting the Dirge, by overloading nearby speakers by killing regular zombies, and then throwing the mood balls at the creature while it's near the massive speaker to overload it, rendering the Dirge vulnerable for a short period. This fight genuinely took like an hour to beat, including the couple of failed attempts I had while trying to figure out how it all worked. After finally killing the Dirge, he explodes, and so does the massive speaker. Cadenza then tells us that she doesn't know what we are exactly, and promptly fucks off without giving us any other clues. We return to Grace for a final conversation about the beat, and she decides to stay at Sola, should the beat ever return for a second round. Once again, I quite like the DLC. It really expanded on more of the lore and dived into the nitty-gritty of some previously established plot threads. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with Dead Island 2, and honestly, it might currently be my favorite zombie game I've played, in recent years at least. I'll have to see how Dead Rising 3 holds up. Overall, Dead Island 2 was received to generally positive reviews, and the game sold over 1 million copies only 3 days after it launched, proving that its strenuous development wasn't without reward. Hell, it was even nominated for Best Action Game of 2023 at the Game Awards. For its 1-year anniversary, Dambuster put out a statement saying that they're already working on more content for the future of the game. So if you're watching this in like 6 months, everything I've said is entirely irrelevant and you've wasted your time. 8 blade arms out of 10. Hey there, thanks for watching to the end of this video. If you enjoyed, leave a like, a comment and subscribe, as I have 255 more videos to make between now and the inevitable heat death of the universe. Follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. I've been Xaniverse, and I'm off to uncover the mysteries of a spooky exclusion zone.